Thanks for being on, guys. I really appreciate it.
On YouTube?
Yeah, you are showing up live.
Yep. Yep. 2 watching.
All right. Well, thanks, y'all. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye.
What's up, guys? Hello there. From Kent Kari. Escape Reality Films. How are you? How's it going? Let me adjust the camera for the vertical view. How's everybody doing? So I'm trying something new. I'm live on a lot of different platforms right now. Let me check on whether this is working. I see the chat, but it's not displaying on here. Which is odd. Polly, want a cracker, anyone? How's it going, man? I see Twitch chat. Guys on the YouTube side, let me know how things are going. This is the first time I'm streaming to a whole bunch of different platforms right now.
For some reason, what is okay for me.
Oh, there's the chat now. I see the chat now. It's showing up finally. To be honest, the one Ray Skywalker joke that I actually like is the Raid Shadow Legends. Makes sense. Can we get somebody to go on the TikTok side and see if we can't see the comments there? Oz Comics, g'day, g'day. How's it going? Hopefully we get to see all of the chats in one place. That's what I'm trying to do. I want to be able to see all the chats in one spot, one place, because can you guys send a chat in TikTok? Before I get started with this debunking thing, because I want as many people as possible to see me debunk this video. Yeah, if somebody could go on the TikTok side and try to send a message there, see if we've got people. If we got their messages popping up.
Okay, let's talk.
Okay. I see a whole bunch of TikTok messages now. And I got some Instagram messages. This is great. This is great. I think everything's working. Let me catch up with the chat really quickly because it wasn't showing up for me. Thank you for all you do, spreading positivity and great info about Star Wars. Thank you, that one nerd Raven. You can't say play button on TikTok. They tend to suppress streams that support other socials. Well, they're gonna have to deal with it. Okay, we got Twitch, we got YouTube, we got TikTok, we got Instagram, got a whole bunch. Okay, we leave no stone unturned when it comes to Yoda's hut or Dyad in the Forest. Not today, not this time. For Light and Life, debunking time. Shout out to Kenny, shout out to Cal, shout out to Harith, Dib Human, Oz Comics, Princess Dark Matter. Hello. Yeah, look at the flood. Yeah, I think everything came rushing in. Still waiting for more Rey Skywalker and Friends for now, but I'm catching up on other anime and the new Zelda game while Star Wars is slow. Definitely recommend Echoes of Wisdom. I recommend Wistoria, Wand, and Sword. I also recommend Ranma Half, the remake that's out on Netflix right now. But I'm glad to see all of the chats in one place once again. So if you guys are unaware, this episode of Yoda's Hut, I am going to debunk one of the most famous videos out there as it relates to painting Rey as a Mary Sue. Every time someone says Rey is a Mary Sue in my comment section, I ask them, what makes you think so? And their first response is, watch Literature Devil's video. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch Literature Devil's video and we're going to debunk it point for point, minute by minute, scene by scene. Just so everyone's aware and can use it as their own citation for debunking this video. So, without further ado, how's it going? I'm Taylor. Is the Old Republic storyline not canon, or the Old Republic in general, if that makes any sense? The Old Republic is canon as a chronological event or a chronological epic. The stories are not canon. The stories are legends. And some of those stories are my favorite stories. All right. Let's get to this video, guys. Why Rey is a Mary Sue and Luke Skywalker is not. Already, it's illogical. I hate to when Rey is called a Mary Sue, but I found it more aggravating nowadays when people basically yell that she's Palpatine or stole the Skywalker name all the time. Yeah. But it's all predicated upon the hatred and the rage baiting grifterverse chudpocalypse movement that we are now fighting against. Because all of these videos are operating off of the assumption that they are better than the material they are criticizing. They are armchair critics who do not understand media, film, or story. So, let's go and watch this video and debunk it all. Why Rey is a Mary Sue and Luke Skywalker is not. That's a tough premise to prove. In my opinion, Rey is a Palpatine. Rey is a Palpatine. Correct. Her chosen name is Rey Skywalker. I think that's where most people lose it. Here we go.
Oh, before we get started, my comic Dr. Alpha Miracle Child is now live on Indiegogo. If you've ever wondered what Fight Club's Tyler Durden would be like as a mad scientist, or ever been interested in fast-paced, over-the-top supervillain action with complex story and characters inspired from the themes of Alan Moore's Killing Joke and the ruthless pulp style of Frank Miller's Sin City, then I suggest you give it a look. Also, everyone who backs will be eligible for an exclusive bonus story, Lady Midnight, The Jolly
out of
Goodbye,
respect,
which should we get funded, the digital version will be sent out to backers by Christmas, and the story will be included in the first printing
all
only,
of these
which
points.
means that any other iteration of Dr. Alpha or a second printing will not contain this story. And backers now have the opportunity to see their supervillains as central characters, either as a main antagonist or an ally to Lady Midnight. Links to the campaign can be found in the description or by clicking the icon in the upper right-hand corner. Now, on to the video.
On to the video.
I'd like to open this video with a quote from the great Han Solo. That's not how the Force works.
So the first point is that's not how the Force works. Let's see how much he understands how the Force works.
What is a Mary Sue? This question has haunted writers for decades, sometimes for better and sometimes for worse. But it seems that the common definition has become more or less a character who is too powerful or too perfect. However, that isn't always necessarily the case.
Right out of the gate, incorrect definition of Mary Sue. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to look it up live, just so everybody has the correct definition of a Mary Sue. Mary Sue is a term used to describe a fictional character, usually female, who is seen as too perfect or almost boring for lack of flaws, which is something that comes from dictionary.com, which has zero context and zero nuance to the etymological origin of this word. It's an archetype in fiction, where it is a self-insert for the author. It's usually a self-insert. It's a literary trope, and it has nothing to do with them being too perfect or them being too powerful. That is the broadest definition I can give you of the trope. But let's see what he has to say about how it's not necessarily the case.
After all, you have characters like Dream from Neil Gaiman's Sandman, whose powers are considered to be more powerful than the gods of any pantheon. You have Superman, who is super strong, intelligent, handsome, and possesses nigh incorruptible morals. He's beloved by the people he
Superman's a Mary Sue. I don't like this example at all, and the reason he's giving the whole counterpoint he's beloved is going to matter down the line.
protects. He's selfless, kind, and generous. He personifies what every hero should strive to become. And to top it off, he has more power than an entire superhero team combined. But these qualities alone don't definitively prove that a character is a Mary Sue. While writer quality may vary over the decades of Superman's existence, both the characters of Dream and Superman overall are beloved characters and aren't typically considered Mary Sues.
Dream isn't a Mary Sue. Dream's powers are explicitly explained in Sandman, and Superman is a Mary Sue. Superman literally lands on Earth where the sun coincidentally makes him as powerful as he is, and he has no upper limit, he has no upper ceiling. So that is already a self-insert, but I digress.
Why? Because the dirty truth behind a Mary Sue is that it is ultimately a product of bad writing. But
no, not at all. This is why most people can't make it through this video, because the beginning of this video presupposes that Mary Sues are a product of bad writing when it's a trope and is it's prescriptive of the quality of writing, not that it is a product of bad writing. And he's also poisoning the well. And if you don't know what that means, he's priming the audience to already see Ray as a Mary Sue by associating this picture with Mary Sue. It's part of the illusory truth effect.
But what does that mean? In a previous video, I explored a more universal definition of what constitutes a character as a Mary Sue, and at the risk of lingering on old ground for too long, I'll say that the summary of my definition is a character to which the plot and universe bend.
Does that sound familiar? A character to which the universe and plot bend? What did I say about Superman? Does Superman's powers evolve and change when the plot needs it to change? How many times have we witnessed Superman's upper limits only for it to be broken because the story needs it to happen? This is why this premise of why one character is a Mary Sue and the other isn't is flawed. The definition has evolved. What it was has now changed, just like racism now includes power, just like how woke used to mean something, but it's now a catch-all term to mask people's bigotry. I mean, yeah, look at all of the different kryptonite variations. Exactly.
From laws to people to plain logic and common sense, all of these things can and will be bent or broken in the presence of a Mary Sue.
Hold on, but that describes every protagonist ever.
Some ill-bred ignoramus might call, as a cloud of Dorito dust puffs whimsically into the air, but that would be incorrect.
Me? Incorrect?
Because while a character might not be immediately classified as a Mary Sue if they defeat a veteran soldier in single combat, the character might earn that label if the character in question doesn't have the training, skill, or combat experience to face down said veteran, let alone defeat him. These are what we'll call Mary Sue.
Now, if we look at what we have on screen, the Mary Sue has no training, no skill, no combat experience in relation to the context of this scenario he set up. Talking about someone defeating a military, like a person that's militarily advantaged. And he says that might not be the case unless they don't have training, have no skill, no combat experience. That's a Mary Sue. Does Superman defeat the general of Krypton's armies in Zod? Zod, who has all of the training in the world in the military, is defeated by Clark Kent, raised on a farm. We literally have a farmer versus a military general, and Zod's defeated. Now, I only call Superman a Mary Sue using his definition. But that's why we're trying to be consistent here by debunking this video. We're trying to be consistent and using his logic across the board.
Moments. For example, if a fresh-faced farm boy who's never even seen a sword suddenly picks one up and, without any kind of outside divine or supernatural aid, defeats a war veteran of 15 years in single combat, you likely just witnessed a Mary Sue moment.
And that's what we just established. Clark Kent, Superman, is a farm boy. He grew up with these powers. That's where his advantage comes in. But Zod is a general, a veteran in fighting and in combat and with years of experience. That, according to his definition, would be a Mary Sue moment. But because this person is masking their misogyny, they're not calling Superman a Mary Sue according to these guidelines that he's setting forth.
If a genius terrorist who has been shown to be brilliant enough to outsmart the good guys at every turn with meticulous skill, leaving no opening unguarded, and then the newbie field agent enters the scene and suddenly the genius terrorist begins to make silly, uncharacteristic mistakes, or his once hyper-competent underlings suddenly become incompetent for no explained reason.
This is where all of these arguments fall apart. How's it going, Fern? Hello, Eternal Sith. This is where all of these arguments fall apart. For no explicable reason is another word for I did not pay one iota of attention to the story. So a newbie agent could very well win against a genius villain. If that newbie agent was set up to have skills and talent becoming of someone who can defeat the genius villain. Just because they're a newbie agent doesn't mean that they don't come with inherent skills that they've garnered over the course of their life. You could be new to an agency, but you can have experience and skills associated with that trade. I gotta ask, what are your thoughts on the poster and them incorporating crypto? Which poster? Moving on.
Then, you'd likely just witnessed a Mary Sue moment. If your everyman rookie pilot flies off to face down a squadron of elite enemy pilots infamous for their skill and wins easily for no adequately explained reason other than he's just awesome, you likely just witnessed a Mary Sue.
Where else have we seen a rookie pilot defeating an elite squad? He's already dug himself into a hole with his premise by this very setup. I'll let the chat decide that one. What's going on, VGC? You're a mod because you're a mod. What is it with you that every time I hear you talk, you are speaking pure facts, my friend? Because I operate on facts. I literally don't put myself out there as a know-it-all. I have to cite my sources every time. Episode 4, A New Hope. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Exactly. Luke and Anakin in their first movies. Rookie pilots. Elite squad. Just to kind of, distill it down to its baser elements.
moment. In fact, if the only explanation you can find for a character's power is they're just awesome, then you're likely looking at a Mary Sue.
And that's why neither Rey, Luke, or Anakin are Mary Sues, because it's not just because they're awesome. But if you're going off of this video's logic, this video's definition, you would have to ascribe that to all three of them. But the video's premise is why Rey is a Mary Sue and Luke Skywalker is not. So we have to debunk that, because they're either all Mary Sues or none of them are, based on his definition.
So the reason why characters as powerful as Dream, or as supposedly perfect as Superman, are well liked and aren't usually considered Mary Sues is because the plot doesn't treat them as such.
The plot very much treats them as such, except the plot treats Dream in the role that he is. If you've read Sandman or if you've watched Sandman, he's a horrible example to use in this scenario. Superman, the plot bends to him all of the time.
By themselves, there's no way of knowing. A Mary Sue isn't just a character, because a character can be equipped with all manner of skills and powers. It all depends on how they are treated by the plot, and it's through a pattern of these Mary Sue.
I'll tell you what. If you think about the first time that Superman turned back time by flying around Earth, it was unprecedented, but that is literally the definition of the plot bending to a character. Superman is literally made to be the guy who always wins, especially early on. Superman is every writer's wet dream.
Moments, or lack thereof, that we will see why Luke Skywalker stands as a good character, and why Rey stands as a lifeless, blatant Mary Sue.
So, in these videos, you have to start with the premise and prove the premise before you reach that conclusion. This is why I say that this person has already sullied his credibility by poisoning the well. Your premise is why Rey is a Mary Sue and Luke Skywalker is not. You should start with your evidence and then come to the conclusion, versus poisoning the well by saying this is all that Rey is distilled into. A blatant Mary Sue, and Luke Skywalker's a good character. So let's go ahead and debunk it all.
Thanks to Disney's ever-increasing laziness, pushed onto us under the thin veneer of homage, the stories of Rey and Luke Skywalker make a fairly easy side-by-side comparison, since the respective
It's not a
tales of
side-by-side
New Hope
comparison
and
at
The
all.
Force Awakens share many similarities. The presence of a soul in A New Hope being one of the only major glaring differences when lined up against The Force Awakens' rancid, shambling husk. And keep in mind that the heart of the original Star Wars trilogy was the hero's journey formula.
Your bias is showing, my dude. It is not a one-to-one comparison, because Rey is not in the position to destroy the Starkiller base. Luke's trench run is Rey's fight with Kylo Ren. In that, it is not a one-to-one comparison. So you're already wrong with your diagnosis of the narrative beats between the two characters.
Which, at its heart, follows the story of a relatively normal person going through a series of trials to emerge a powerful hero by the end. And it seems that Disney's Star Wars trilogy was
Man wanted that hook so badly he killed his own argument before it started. Listen, this is how they operate. They start with the conclusion and work their way backwards to find arguments to prop up that conclusion. When in reality, you start with the premise and then you prove that premise to arrive at a conclusion.
attempting to follow
It's
in the original
epistemologically
trilogy's
incorrect.
footsteps, which means Rey and Luke are both expected to begin their journey as relatively normal people, discounting legendary fathers, ancient prophecies, etc. And considering both protagonists eventually develop and change as the journey progresses, it can be argued that this is a pretty decent assumption to make. So let's begin with character setup. Luke enters the story as a farm boy, a moisture farmer to be exact. Rey enters her story as a lone scavenger, a circumstance people
Okay.
have pointed out as an early deal breaker, an early Mary Sue moment. And those people
No, that's
have
not a Mary
point,
Sue
but
moment at
things
all.
aren't that simple. Rey surviving alone on a hostile planet wouldn't necessarily classify as a Mary Sue moment, and it wouldn't necessarily break the narrative either, even in a hero's journey formula. However, here's where the plot takes a wrong turn. Luke Skywalker is introduced with a particular set of skills such as general knowledge on droids, how to drive, and how to use weaponry.
How is he introduced? Where is the skill established that he knows how to use weaponry? So he works with R2 and C-3PO. That's established. He can drive a speeder. That's established. You're already making things up to prop up Luke Skywalker's argument. There's no establishment of him using weaponry. In fact, he stumbles upon himself when he encounters Ponda Baba, carrying the rifle to ward off Tuskens. I mean, that's a stretch because, again, the statement here is use weaponry, not carry weaponry. If this point was how to carry weapons, it wouldn't be such a big deal. Harriet says he can look down a scope so he knows how to use a weapon. I suppose.
Now, how does he know these things? Believe it or not, the movie doesn't need to tell us directly.
Yes, the
is a
movie doesn't have
after
to tell
all.
us.
It can show us things, and we, as the audience, can make logical connections.
It doesn't have to show us, and we as the audience can make logical connections, in which case you're going to do that biased towards Luke and completely ignore everything, all the connections with Rey. But we'll do that when we get
So
there.
we can logically assume that Luke was taught these skills by his uncle Owen. And why would he do that? Because Luke is presented to us as an essential worker on Owen's farm. In fact, it becomes a point of conflict for Luke's character when he expresses his desire to leave and join an academy, and then Owen forces him to stay. To quote, "Owen, harvest is when I need you the most. It's only 1 season more. This year we'll make enough on the harvest that I'll be able to hire some more hands, and then you can go to the academy next year. You must understand, I need you here, Luke." From what the audience is given, we can reasonably conclude that the skills Luke has come from growing up on a farm residing on a hostile planet. Rey doesn't have anything for the audience to connect with. And
This is a complete and gross misinterpretation of what you think a scavenger has to go through alone on a planet. Nothing for the audience to connect with. Take away the term Star Wars. Take away Rey. Take away Luke. Any story that starts with someone surviving in the desert for long periods of time. This is the story of the boy raised by wolves. This is the story of the character that was hardened by their environment. If you find that starting as a scavenger means there is nothing there, you've already lost.
instead, the movie decides to focus on how alone she is, which we could have already gathered when she was introduced, as a lone scavenger, collecting things to bring.
Does he just assume Rey cannot live on her own because woman? Because I swear. I mean, we'd have to assume so.
Back to an old abandoned AT-AT. In fact, you could say that she's almost like a human version of Pixar's WALL-E, without the human.
No. Not at all. This is the hugest leap in equivalence I've ever heard. WALL-E is completely different. Their only similarity is that they start out alone, isolated somewhere. But WALL-E has no advantage of growing up being raised in these conditions and interaction with other humans like Rey does. I love how he's like show don't tell, and Rey's opening literally has no dialogue and walks you through a day in her life. Exactly. Does Ro think Jawas are just fleshy Wall-E too? No, I mean this video is chock full of inaccuracies.
Humanity. This might be a general problem with the film, but the focus on how alone and lonely she is seemed to cause quite a few missed opportunities.
It's not a general problem with the film. It's a general problem with your viewership and comprehension.
That could have given us more detail about Rey's character, that is, if she had one. Wally liked to collect things. When the movie takes us back to his particularly
Are you going to equivocate his collectible
it's filled with various
trait
odds
with
and ends,
scavenger?
pieces of junk that Wally had found interesting. We see him interact with these items. Without being told directly, we can see his fascination with humanity, and we get a strong sense of his character through these interactions. Through his meticulous organization of his items, we can see how much he cares. When he puts that lid on his head, we get a clearer sense of his desired connection to humanity by mimicking human behavior.
I feel like this person is literally saying into the microphone, I like simpler stories because it's easy to understand. We get the same character for Rey the whole 5 minutes. Where are we showing all of that?
In contrast, Rey's house gives us two sentimental items, a wilting flower and a doll. She doesn't interact with either, so
she doesn't need to. It's there to tell their own stories.
don't get any additional information other than she's lonely, which has already been established. These items could have served the plot better if they were symbols of Rey's parents. This is especially important.
No, because they're not a symbol of Rey's parents. They're a symbol of her time on the planet alone. Her finding life in a lifeless planet. Her making a doll out of making an effigy of a pilot because she clearly found Republic pilot gear, which is why she has the helmet. They're not a symbol of her parents. The symbol of her parents are the tallies on the wall that she scribes day in and day out. Bro just forgot putting on the X-Wing helmet, doing the same sort of moment. Exactly. They're picking and choosing, and they're also, like I said in the beginning, this whole video is just poisoned because he started off poisoning the well, which should have been an obvious debunk overall, but I'm going to go forth anyway. Robbie Allen says, if you think about this stuff at the absolute base level, it almost makes sense. Sort of, kind of. If you think about this stuff in the way that he's laying it out, it almost makes sense. But if you've watched the movie, he's wrong.
Important because now it's more difficult to use the she was mentored by her parents explanation. Luke was taught farming skills by his uncle because his uncle was a farmer. The movie spends a decent amount of time establishing this fact, while Rey can scavenge and survive alone on a desert home planet because she's just awesome.
No. Again, poisoning the well. This is just a wrong sentence. Rey can survive because she's been on the planet as a scavenger for 14 years. We see her relationship with Unkar Plutt when we get to Nema Outpost, how she has to scavenge for food and how she has to fight with other scavengers for the parts, how rough and hard her life is. She wasn't just born the day Force Awakens came out. She's been on that planet, and we can say this about anybody who has survived on a hostile planet, on a harsh environment for years. Rey has survived on Jakku for 14 years. And so that is how she can survive. What do I keep looking at? I keep looking at the chat. That's what I'm looking at. Luke would literally do the same on Jakku, and she would do the same on Tatooine. Where's bro's logic? I don't know where it is. If Rey was on the farm with the Lars, she would have the same skills. If Luke was alone in the desert, he would have the same skills. This sentence right here is that she's awesome, just awesome, is a blatant misrepresentation of the story. Literally, this guy is just picks or it didn't happen. Didn't they go over this in books too? I'm trying to debunk this video not using the books, because when you bring in the books, it gets even worse for Luke. So, all I will say is this. Rey survives because she's grown up in this environment and has had to survive. Not because she's just awesome.
While her parents do exist as a possible explanation, thanks to Captain Mystery Box, we don't even get a visual clue, where we could have seen, for example, a journal of notes with a name on it that Rey uses as a reference when looking for valuable parts to scavenge, hinting to a scavenger parent, or at least a scavenger mentor, and would therefore give the audience a satisfying conclusion as to how Rey got these skills.
This is stuff that you're shown. Her cleaning the parts and trading them into Unkar Plutt for food should tell you that she has learned with Unkar Plutt throughout the years which parts are what, how much they're worth, how much portions she will get from them. That is literally the movie showing you how she has extrapolated all of this for years. You don't need a MacGuffin like that. You don't need a journal from her dad. This is how you live life. You don't need that. If you were watching the movie, you would have gotten all of this. Hear me out. She can learn by literally watching the dozens of other scavengers. I mean, yeah. Even if we were to argue that, like, clearly, in order for you to eat in Nima Outpost, you have to give parts. And we see later on in the film, she was left with Unkar Plutt. So clearly, that is who was teaching her throughout all of these years. It's not hard to put these things together, and you don't need external media. You just watch the movie. She has to be shown being taught, otherwise she's girl boss. Exactly. I can understand the criticism in the first sequel movie being too open-ended, but past that is silly. The Death Star tech was like nothing he's seen. Yeah, I mean, it's wildly intellectually dishonest, this video, Johnsky. It's disingenuous too. Like I said, he's poisoned the well.
We got nothing, and
you got everything. You just missed it all.
this leaves her defenders to argue that Rey has survived all alone because, you guessed it,
Go up, sorry. Oh, this is like if I went, how did Luke know how parts of the Death Star worked? Oh, that's true.
she's just awesome, though it's probably been repackaged as some combination of Rey.
This is part of the illusory truth effect, where you say something enough, no matter how false it is, some people will start to believe it. This is the exact reason why he is repeating over and over again, she's just awesome. To make people believe that's all she's about. She's not.
It, she's just awesome, though it's probably been repackaged as some combination of Rey being strong, independent, brave, etc. But even if you can
She's not
accept that
brave.
explanation,
She's not brave at first. She wants to go back to Jakku. She doesn't want any part of this.
and are willing to wave off her unexplained skills, that's fine, because this Mary Sue moment alone doesn't mark Rey as a Mary Sue, and it gets worse. Let's go back to Luke Skywalker. From the moment we meet him, we can see he's kind of whiny. He'd rather be off with his friends instead of doing farm work. What teenager wouldn't? To quote, "Luke, but I was going to Tosh Station to pick up some power converters. Owen, you can waste time with your friends when your chores are done." We later find out his whiny behavior isn't just typical teenage angst, but a case of Disney princess syndrome. In other words, Luke Skywalker yearns for something more. He thirsts for adventure. Owen, look, it's only one season more. Luke, yeah, that's what you said when Biggs and Tank left. Baru, where are you going? Luke, looks like I'm going nowhere. Then we have Baru. Luke's not a farmer, Owen. He has too much of his father in him. Now, once you get past the sheer awesomeness that Luke had a friend named Tank, we see evidence of Luke's frustration. We get the feeling that he's itching to go off on some wild-eyed quest, but can't. Then he sees Princess Leia and becomes immediately motivated by her. Luke, who is she? She's beautiful. To clarify, we get a good look at Luke's motivations.
Oh my gosh. Do we? Do we? Nolliver asks, do you like the sequels? I like some of them. I like The Last Jedi. The Force Awakens is middling, and The Rise of Skywalker is one of my least favorites. We literally see this with Rey when she's staring at the old lady as the ship leaves the planet. See, the thing about this is that the call in the hero's journey doesn't always have to be self-motivated. It could be externally motivated, just like with VGC saying she's staring at the old lady, but also Finn showing up.
His desire to leave that lonely backwater world
And
behind.
BB-8.
The only thing we got from Rey was her desire to stay on her backwater planet and wait for her parents to return. And at this point, one might say she's motivated to help the Resistance. But we can see that while she has heard of the Resistance, just like Luke had heard of the Rebellion, we're never given a reason to think she really cares. Because, unlike Luke, Rey isn't determined to leave.
You don't have to be determined to leave to care. We get her compassion when she fixes BB-8's antenna. And then when she tells BB-8 to avoid all of these bad locations on Jakku, and then when BB-8 insists on accompanying her, she allows it. And then we get to Nima Outpost, when she's tempted to sell off BB-8 for all of the portions in the world and doesn't. We're getting her character development all throughout all of this. And while she's not determined to leave, we see that she is compassionate.
Luke wanted to follow his friends, transmit his application to the Academy. In fact, during the course of her journey, Rey insists that she must return home.
That has no bearing on whether or not she answers the call in the hero's journey. It's called trepidation. It's not called motivation.
So, when the time comes for her to go charging off into the galaxy, it seems forced. Now, that isn't to say she needs to be a wild-eyed adventurer. On the contrary, even in a hero's journey formula, you can have a main character who doesn't want to leave their home. Rey instead is presented to us as more of a Bilbo Baggins type, content to stay where she is until something or someone pulls her into an adventure.
Okay, I'll grant you that.
But actually, she ends up choosing to go on the adventure. Why? Because of one defining character trait that wasn't go on the adventure.
Rey chooses to go on the adventure. She wasn't pushed. I'm sorry? The fact that the First Order starts blowing up Nima Outpost and they have to all run for their lives was her choosing? Or was it pushed? She meets Finn, and BB-8 recognizes the jacket, and now she has some questions. But then the First Order attacks, and now they have to run. Luke also literally tells Obi-Wan, I can't go. I can take you as far as Anchorhead. Yeah, that's true. Bilbo literally wanted to go on the adventure he was on. He just didn't want people to know. I think people know what Mary Sue's are anymore. Or I think people don't know what Mary Sue's are anymore. They never did. The Chuds, the Grifterverse, the Rage Baiters, they never know the definition of the words they use. Mary Sue's are just writer's inserts. Exactly. It's a literary trope.
Why? Because of one defining character trait that wasn't hinted at, and instead manifests itself just when the plot demanded it. A trait I'll get into in a moment. Now let's look back at Ray's more human counterpart, Wally. The creators of Wally used his interaction with certain items to show us his personality, but then they used a mix of his interest in human
Already, like again, like we said in the beginning, this whole comparison with Wally is disingenuous and not remotely equivalent.
objects and his now established personality to give us his motivation, romance. Wally becomes entranced by a romantic musical film, and we as the audience members can see how deeply the idea of romance affects him. Then we see this hint play out when we see him become instantly enraptured by Eva, so enraptured that he took off on an adventure just to follow
I'm
her.
convinced
It
he
gives us
just
a
loves
plausible,
Wally as a
organic
kid.
flow from one point to the next. Wally, much like Ray, is portrayed as being
Has
lonely, and the
nothing to do
creators
with
use his
Ray.
romantic loneliness as a motive for him to leave on an adventure. But unlike Wally, Ray was given no such setup. Every instance of her being portrayed as lonely is done to do just that. Tell us she's alone. Remember that one defining character trait I mentioned Ray had? The driving character element that ousts her from her lonely daily life? If you recall, what sparks her adventure is her encounter with BB-8, when she saves the droid from another scavenger. For some reason, some might think that this is
For some reason, because it's a movie. I feel like these people wake up and watch movies and just be like, and just say, well, that wouldn't happen in real life. No, it wouldn't happen in real life. This is a movie. It's a story. Things happen. The plot is pushed forward. I don't know what to tell you. And her driving character trait is shown to us when she sees the old lady cleaning the scavenged parts. Is this going to be her life until she's old? There's very clear story beats missed or ignored about Rey just to paint this picture.
evidence of Rey's kind heart. Right after helping BB-8, she does nothing. She just leaves the droid where she found it, which again feels off. Rey not only saves the droid, but speaks to it like a human. You'd think that mentality would stay consistent.
No, you wouldn't. Because she's a scavenger, and she's on a scavenger planet. A desert planet, and she's not going to assume that BB-8 is either familiar with her, will be welcoming to her, and she's not going to assume that she has any business with BB-8, just like dealing with other scavengers on the planet. She's going to go on her way, mind her business, and just make sure that BB-8 is safe.
But she just leaves. I mean, Leon from The Professional was a lone assassin and still decided to save Matilda's life, make her laugh, and letting her sleep over before almost killing her / kicking
This
her
is-
out. Frank Martin from The Transporter was considered
This is just a list of movies that are irrelevant to the discussion.
enough to give a kidnapped girl something to drink before turning her over to her kidnappers. Even Han Solo, the iconic bad boy, left the barkeep some money after he shot Greedo. Rey could have offered BB-8 some assistance so it wouldn't be taken by the scavenger.
She did. She told BB-8 to avoid certain locations. Also, she ended up taking him with her anyway.
Again, but she walks away, with the scavenger she just saved it from still in view. You'd think someone kind-hearted would be a little kinder. So why did she get involved at all? Who knows? Maybe she...
Who knows? This is what happens when you don't watch the movie. You end up asking questions that don't even make sense. Why did she help? Because she happened upon a droid that was trying to be captured by a Tito, and she's trying to free it. That's it. This isn't like rocket science. Man wants to come off as knowledgeable by listing a bunch of movies so it sells the argument. Yeah. I don't have any smart or extremely logical reasons for why it's bad. I just don't like the third trilogy. Respect to those who do. DW7, that's, I mean, we are a community. The Dyad community is all about discourse, and we don't really, we respect people who don't like things and like things. That's not what this is really about. But I appreciate your opinion on the matter. What we're trying to do is essentially debunk this entire notion that Rey is a Mary Sue and the other main characters are not. And the premise of this video, debunking it, is they're either all Mary Sues or none of them are. So, like, again, you can like the movies or hate the movies. It just doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is if you're having a discussion in good faith or not. Okay, is its name Tito or is it a species? The way she says it in the movie versus how it's stated in the book had me wondering. Tito is a species. I don't like the third trilogy, but these attacks on these characters are sophist at best. Which is why we're doing this, man. This video has 1.5 million views, and it has poisoned and rotted a generation of movie viewers. Just curious, would you agree or disagree with the sentiment Rey had plot armor but not a Mary Sue? Yeah, I mean all characters have plot armor. If our main characters died, we wouldn't have a story. That's not anything that is controversial to accept. But that's also the reason why I say they're either all Mary Sues or none of them are. And in this case, they either all had plot armor or none of them did. Are we going to tackle the 20-hour Mahler videos? I mean, I'm motivated to, just for the purposes of fighting back the Grifterverse, but like 20 hours is a huge ask. How's it going, Ian the Archer? And Awesome Sauce has joined the chat. All right, let's go.
She read the script. Or maybe she's just awesome.
Again, here's with the illusory truth effect. You just repeat she's just awesome, and people are supposed to accept it. Who knows? Maybe Ray read the script, or maybe you didn't pay attention. That's also an option if we Occam's razor this argument.
Too would have been a simple matter to set up. Even Wally hinted at the main character's kind-hearted nature when we saw him give affection to his pet cockroach. Again, Rey's introduction had focused so much on showing her being a strong, independent woman, they forgot to add meaning.
No. I will say this, guys. I'm going to be 100% transparent. If your takeaway from the beginning of The Force Awakens is that they were trying to focus on Rey being a strong, independent woman, you might be a misogynist. You might have internalized misogyny. The whole purpose of the beginning of The Force Awakens is to show that she was alone, she had survived all this time, and her conditions were rough. That's it. There's no dialogue in the beginning where someone's like, "Oh, you're definitely a strong, independent woman." Like, no. Put any character in that situation and they've just survived a harsh environment. That's all they're trying to establish. Yeah, it's all explained.
They almost had it too. Remember this flower? Had it looked cared for? And had we seen Rey care for it like Leon cared for his plan?
Had it looked cared for? That flower has more life in it than Jakku has in it in infinite parsecs. It's cared for. You just don't understand its existence within the context of her surroundings, bro.
a symbol of life and care amidst a harsh desert planet. That would have been hint enough, but we didn't get that. Instead, we got nothing, which again sets us up for
Instead, you got nothing.
another moment of she's just awesome.
Wipe it from your minds, guys. This illusory truth effect. He's just going to keep on repeating that.
Mary Sue moment. Also, you would think a kind-hearted person would have verbally confronted Finn when BB-8 told Rey he was wearing Poe Dameron's jacket, instead of instantly beating him up like BB-8's personal attack dog. By all accounts, what broke her steadfast dedication to staying and waiting for her parents to return was not a thirst for adventure, or even an event that forced her hand like Gandalf did with Bilbo. What motivates Rey to begin her quest, her main identifiable trait, is liking BB-8.
No. Not at all. The event that forces her hand is Nema Outpost being attacked by the First Order. Oh gosh. When you watch videos that distill events down to such base thoughts, such reductionist thoughts, you often wonder how he got the name Literature Devil. She trusts BB-8 because BB-8 is a droid, and droids do not, for any self-serving motivations, would lie. So when BB-8 says, "That man has my master's jacket," she doesn't attack him. First of all, she knocks him down and then kind of puts him in a position to explain himself. What would you do if you were out in public and someone's running by, and then someone else goes, "Stop that man, he stole my purse"? Would you stop that person, or you'd be like, "Listen, hold on. I need to really quick check with your credibility. I can't really stop that man just based off of your word." That's exactly what happens.
Until now, her only established desire was to wait for her parents. For some reason. Maybe they're supposed to bring back a really, really good birthday cake. Maybe she loves them. Maybe she hates them. It's not clear because, again, we're given nothing.
No, we're not given nothing. Rey's desire is not waiting for her parents. That's just not true. Rey's desire is belonging, which gives you a symptom of waiting there, checking off tallies on the wall for her parents to return. But she doesn't want to stay there and wait for them. She stays there and waits for them because she believes they'll come back.
No story about her father being a great warrior, or fond recollections of her mother telling her stories about the Jedi, nothing. And remember, she was going to abandon BB-8 until the droid begged to go with her. So it's a little jarring when the next minute she's beating up men twice her size and tackling Finn like he ate the last french fry. When this character switch happens, there's usually an event that endears defendee to defender, like when Matilda proved her strength by shooting a gun out the window, after which Leon decided to train her. Or when Luke proved himself to Han over the course of an window that endears Finn like he ate the last french fry. A little jarring when the next minute she's beating up men twice her size and tackling Finn like he ate the last french fry. When this character switch happens, there's usually an event that endears defendee to defender.
That's the event! What are you doing? Are you watching this movie? I mean, I know we've established that they're not watching this movie. That's the event that turns her into a defender. They're trying to take BB-8, and she's defending BB-8. Like, how do you write that sentence? There's usually an event that turns them from defendee to defender, and gloss over that event that is the event that you're trying to
Like when Matilda proved her strength by shooting a gun out the window, after which Leon decided to train her. Or when Luke proved himself to Han over the course of an adventure, after which Han flew in to save Luke during the Death Star run. We don't get any such thing with Rey or BB-8. There's no scene where BB-8 proves its usefulness to Rey. The only reason Luke chased down R2-D2 is because...
Why would BB-8 need to prove its usefulness to Rey? She knows droids. She knows that she needs to get him back to the Resistance. And she's going to help do that. Especially since the outpost was attacked by the First Order and she has to leave. I don't understand why you're trying to get a Luke Han Solo moment out of a different story. She also figured out how valuable the droid was by the amount of portions Unkar Plutt offers for the droid, coupled with the fact that Unkar Plutt sends marauders to steal the droid from her. Everything is compounding. All of the events are piling on each other to paint a picture that this droid is important and that Rey needs to help it. But none of these literary elements, none of these narrative elements are catching on with the literature devil.
Because he didn't want his uncle to know that his hormones drove him to remove R2's restraining bolt, so he could see more Princess Leia, which then allowed R2-D2 to run away in the first place. Rey just decides to adopt BB-8 like a new dog from one scene to the next, for no reason other than she's suddenly, i.e. without being previously established, just that noble.
What? The fact that she saves BB-8 in the first place proves that she's compassionate and noble. The fact that she doesn't just take BB-8 with her proves that. The fact that she gives BB-8's instructions and directions to stay off of dangerous territory proves that. All I'm getting from you is a complete admission that you don't understand story, you don't understand structure, and you do not understand nuance. You're just going to look at these screenshots and say, just because.
Or just that awesome.
Again, with that phrase they keep repeating.
Again, it could have been an easy setup. Remember when Rey was polishing those scraps and she spotted the old lady doing the same exact thing? She could have offered to help, sacrificing her own time for no expected reward, but she didn't. Instead, they used that scene to further indulge into telling us how hard Rey's life is.
Look at these chat bubbles. Should I help that old woman? Nah, this is all about me. This is how they read these scenes. This explains so much with how they read narrative. You watched that scene and that wasn't someone looking at their future. She's clearly looking at the old lady, kind of concerned about where she's going in her life, because they're both doing the same thing.
And the same can go for her sudden ability to fight off two thugs.
But she's a woman living on her own. Of course she would know how to fight.
Belches some gargantuan grotesque. Again, there was no setup. And again, this could have and should have been done during the introduction.
This is the setup. It's the introduction of the movie. The setup should have been done during the introduction. This scene with the Marauders protecting BB-8 is the setup that establishes that she can take care of herself in a harsh environment. This happens during the first act of the movie. You're just completely ignoring. See, this is why it was like every time he says some of these things that should have happened, and it has happened, proves without a shadow of a doubt the guy does not have comprehension skills. There should have been an event where the defender becomes a defendee. That was the moment. There should have been a setup to establish that she could fight for herself. And it should have been done in the introduction. This is that setup. How are you going to gloss over that fight scene and not say that's the setup that tells us she can fight for herself and she can defend herself in a harsh environment? That was the setup.
Maybe instead of the several scenes of her eating and making food, as if this were a college life documentary, we could have gotten a shot of her practicing.
No. Because that's the setup. The shots of her being alone, the shots of her eating food, they're all to establish different aspects of her character. The shot of her fighting off the scavengers to protect Rey, or to protect BB-8, is another setup of another aspect of her character, which is her toughness. Being able to survive in this environment.
Just a small segment of her
We don't need to see her swinging her staff a few times.
going through the motions, but instead, we have nothing. So when we see her suddenly able to beat up some thugs with almost no problem, these skills just seem to manifest.
First of all, there were some problems. She got grabbed from behind and almost got, what's the word? Thrown down? But she handles it. These skills just seem to manifest. No, like I keep saying to all of these statements, Rey wasn't just born on the release of The Force Awakens. She's been on the planet for 14 years. It's not hard. It's not difficult. Note, we're not told nor shown that Rey has a background that would lead to us thinking she has a fighter's skill set. Ex-soldier, bounty hunter, off-duty bouncer, nothing. We're shown that she has a staff and that she has to fight for her life in this planet. Scavengers are innately tough. How many scavengers have we met in Star Wars that can take care of themselves? She's 19 in this place. Like, it's obvious that she would be able to fight just so she won't be taken advantage of on like a daily. Exactly. She has to be scrappy. She has to be able to fend off other scavengers. She has to be able to fight for her spoils or her scores. You don't need to be an ex-soldier, a bounty hunter, or an off-duty bouncer to learn how to fight and defend yourself in a hostile environment.
And the only explanation we're left with is that she's just awesome. Narratively
Again, with that she's just awesome.
speaking,
These guys really know how to use the illusory truth effect well.
if the goal is to run Rey through a hero's journey, it would be better if she could defend herself but not be able to actually defeat.
That's not a requirement of Hero's Journey. That's just wrong.
them. It would show weakness, vulnerability. In other words, it would show her potential.
Her weakness and her vulnerability is her insecurity with her belonging. Her weakness is wanting to go back and wait for her parents instead of taking charge of her life and accepting the truth. The fact that you need very physical examples of weakness and vulnerability shows that you do not understand the nuance of those words. Weakness and vulnerability can mean a plethora of different things to a character's overall package of traits. Weakness emotionally, vulnerability emotionally. all this person wants to see is that Rey can fight but not win, so that she can show she has weakness. I would hate for this dude to be a DM in a tabletop game. You'd write a nuanced backstory for your character, and he'd just go, "Oh, so you're a historian and you can't wield a sword."
But also leave room to grow. If you remember, even
There's so much room for growth. It's not even funny. Just because she can scrap with the thugs at Nima Outpost doesn't mean she has no room for growth. Again, her weakness and vulnerability is shown to us in a more intrinsic manner rather than an external and physical manner, which is something that you would need, to come to terms with your feminine side to understand.
Luke needed help, and let's talk about that. In A New Hope, Luke is noted as an excellent pilot on several occasions.
Luke's piloting skill is a recurring character point and is one real starting talent.
Rey only mentions her piloting skills in passing.
They both have the same established piloting skill. Rey says, "I've flown before, but I've never left the planet." Luke has flown his T-16. It's a crop duster. It's a terrestrial ship. He has never left the planet. When Biggs says he is the best bush pilot, he is saying he has never left the planet. So Luke and Rey both have experience of, "I've flown before, but I've never left the planet." They have equivalent and equal starting points in piloting experience.
But it is mentioned, so it's not really a hindrance. But their respective piloting skills alone aren't the main point here. Luke's piloting skills are a much larger point than one might initially think. But first, let's go to one of the biggest grievances often referred to by the Star Wars faithful: Rey fixing the Millennium Falcon better than Han Solo, its former owner. The usual defense for this is that Rey is a scavenger and lives alone, and can therefore fix things like a trained mechanic. But
No, that's your defense for this. This is your fabricated defense for this. But the actual defense for this is that Rey says, as soon as Han boards the Millennium Falcon, some moof milker installed a compressor on the hyperdrive. And she says, "Unkah Plut did. I told him that it would... I told him it was a bad idea. It would put too much stress on the hyperdrive." And they both commiserate on that fact. Rey knows about this modification that Unkah Plut did. She did not fix the Millennium Falcon better than Han Solo. She only bypassed a modification that she knew about. I know I visibly look like I am so tired, but I'm doing this so that it's out there. Like, literally, Rey does not fix the Millennium Falcon better than Han Solo. She knows about the compressor and bypasses it. That's it. And Han didn't know about it. Or at least forgot about it.
But we don't know this for sure, because again, this skill was never hinted at. After all, there's a big difference between breaking things and fixing them. For example, even someone without technical skill likely knows what is and isn't valuable on a car, and so any scavenger might know the value of particular ship parts. But knowing what parts do and what pieces are worth...
We could just skip this entire part because I've already defended that part. She knew about the modification, Han didn't, and she bypassed it. She didn't fix the Falcon better than Han Solo did.
Introduce Rey as a scavenger in the morning and an employee at a local mechanic shop in the evening. Kind
That's basically what they did.
of like how Rocky Balboa
Nima Outpost is literally selling parts for money or for portions.
was a boxer and part-time mob enforcer.
This guy just like... This guy wants like a 10-minute scene where she's walking around a speeder or a starship and pointing out all of the parts and fixing every single part of the ship just so they can establish that she knows what she's doing.
like them. Even if you dismissed every example until now, well, remember when I mentioned that logic tended to bend around a Mary Sue? To quote General Hux, my men are exceptionally trained, programmed from birth. This includes Finn. While it's noted that Finn was different and had been given custodial duty, like the guys from Full Metal Jacket were given custodial duty, it doesn't change the fact that Finn had been trained to be a soldier from birth. Even if Finn had been the worst stormtrooper in the bunch, undergoing decades of training should still have an effect. So even if Finn was so pathetic that he would lose in a straight fight against another stormtrooper, it could be logically concluded that when going against someone presumably self-taught like Rey, Finn should still be able to overpower her. But he was overpowered immediately. I guess he had one hell of a doctor's note. Now let's go to Han Solo. The first time she meets Han, he's getting confronted by two gangs. She eventually saves them all, only for Han to pilot the Millennium Falcon, which Rey has already been shown to be quite capable of doing herself. The only piece of help Han actually does offer is his connection to Maz, which they can use to smuggle BB-8 to the Resistance. So why did I mention all that? Allow me to summarize.
You mentioned all that so your video would be longer. What's going on? What's going on?
Rey saves BB-8, saves herself and Finn from the First Order, saves Finn during Han Solo's fiasco, and saves Han Solo from his own idiocy. The idiocy being...
No, not his own idiocy. She saves him from a modification that Unkar Plutt did that Han Solo was not aware of.
A man who has spent decades as an outlaw, having suddenly gotten himself tangled up with two gangs. It's almost like a bad sitcom. Rey shows up and suddenly Han Solo...
Are they pretending Finn didn't shoot the TIE fighters? They're pretending that a whole bunch of minutes of the movie doesn't exist. We're at that point.
Solo is an idiot. Not to mention Rey saving
what did you
the
say?
bad sitcom. Rey shows up and suddenly Han Solo is an idiot.
I mean, if that's your take of the movie, that's a you problem. I never thought that Han Solo was an idiot due to Rey showing up. This is what we would call projection, right? When a woman shows up and you feel some type of way about your... Maybe you feel threatened by the existence of a woman. I don't know. But Rey showing up didn't read to me that Han Solo was then an idiot. He's always been characteristically idiotic, but he's not an idiot.
Not to mention Rey saving Finn during the Kylo Ren encounter. Rey is already awesome. She's the one doing all the saving. Where's the room for growth?
Rey is not already awesome. What are you talking about? The first meeting with Kylo Ren and Rey, she got frozen instantly and taken in for questioning. That was hardly a fight.
In contrast, Luke needed plenty of help during his first movie. In fact, had it not been for his companions, he wouldn't have survived. In fact, had it not been for Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke probably would have died after the Sand People attacked. Afterward, it was Han Solo who took charge when trying to escape the Empire. The only play Luke made during the whole movie was that he heard that the beautiful Princess Leia was being held aboard the Death Star. Then his hormones valiantly kicked in, and those drove him to convince Han to go along with saving Leia by making him imagine a reward, then coming up with a half-baked plan to rescue her. The plan of course backfires, and it ends in a shootout, which probably would have gotten everyone killed if the Empire had not allowed them to escape in the first place. And keep in mind that they only managed...
None of this is relevant at all.
To muddle through that thanks to Obi-Wan's sacrifice and the fighting skills of Han and Chewbacca. Now let's go back to Rey during the Han Solo fiasco. When Han is being confronted by the two gangs, Rey's plan is to trap the gangs inside different rooms while they escape. She makes a mistake, which then accidentally releases a group of very dangerous creatures, which then come out to devour both gangs, allowing Rey and the rest to make an escape without being pursued. Her mistake ended in a better scenario than her original plan. The only person on her side to get caught was of course Finn, who I think is personally hated by the writer. But Rey of course saves him because she knows exactly how to operate devices and controls on a ship she's never been on before.
She was told how the controls work by Han. This is just more what is this? Erasure? Narrative erasure? I don't get, like, knowing how to control doors on a ship, is that a Mary Sue moment? Is that literally where we're at?
For because she's just awesome. But what
Sure. Yeah. She's just awesome there.
does this all have to do with Luke's piloting skills?
She can press buttons because she's just awesome. Oh, okay. We're getting to piloting skills.
Rey is introduced with unexplained expert fighting skills, technical skills, and magical expert level piloting skills,
What?
despite only dabbling.
Despite only dabbling. 14 years on a planet as a scavenger is dabbling. If I went to an interview and they're like, do you have any experience in programming? About 14 years of experience, so I'd say I've dabbled. She's crashing the Millennium Falcon at first. She doesn't know how to pilot it. Magic piloting skills can go under Luke right here, right now. But he's not going to, I assume, right?
Still no sign of a mentor, and she
You don't need a mentor.
uses all these skills to save the day. Meanwhile, Luke's only defining skill during the first movie is his piloting skill, and it's referred to several times. When Luke wants to leave the farm for the academy, when Obi-Wan mentions that he's heard Luke has become a great pilot, when he mentions that Luke's father Anakin was one of the best pilots in the galaxy,
That has no bearing on anything. My dad's a great engineer, and I am the most horrible engineer.
when they meet Han and Luke says he wasn't such a bad pilot, hinting he could buy and fly the ship rather than pay Han. Then the mention that he'd like to spend his days flying his T-16 and Bull's eyeing womp rats, letting us know what kind of practice he's had.
Again, a T-16 is a crop duster. He's a bush pilot. He is not a star pilot.
Luke spent the whole first movie mostly being a burden. By this time, the movie's events had hardened Luke, changed him. He's now more experienced, no longer the farm boy from Tatooine. This results in Luke finally having his big hero moment when he became the one to destroy the Death Star. But even then, it wasn't just Luke's piloting skills that allowed him to save the day. It was the Force. Luke trusted his instincts and used the Force to help guide his hand, letting him know when to fire. And he was only able to do so after having the assistance from a mentor. Keep this moment in mind. I'll be coming back to it soon. But
We're borderline intellectually dishonest. I think we're intellectually dishonest now. Luke went from being a bush pilot, flying in gravity, to flying an X-wing, having never been in dogfights before, having never been in space flight, and video is 36 minutes. Yeah. He goes from having zero experience in space flight and dogfights to besting Imperial pilots and taking down the Death Star. That's where we're at. This guy is glazing Luke so hard.
the first time Rey encounters the Force is when Luke Skywalker's lightsaber happens to be in Maz's bar.
Oh, look, he finally mentioned her mentor. I was wondering when they would get to it.
For some reason. So a legendary sword just so happens to be in a bar where they're just going to get help smuggling BB-8 to the Resistance. There was no logical reason for the audience to even suppose that such an item would be.
Of course there's no reason we would suppose it'd be there. We would all just ask, whoa, how did that get there? That's not a point against the movie.
There. And not only a legendary weapon sitting in some back room of a cantina, but it also calls out to Rey, making up new Force rules in the process. But even if inanimate objects could use the Force, why wouldn't it call out to Han, who had a much stronger connection to Luke? I guess it pays to be the DM's girlfriend.
Han is not as Force sensitive as Rey. Like we've established in canon, everyone has the Force, right? But it all depends on your M count. I don't know why he's making this argument. Again, this is just stacking disingenuous arguments.
Friend. Rey then gets captured later on. Kylo Ren tries to read her mind, and she not only rejects him, but then reads his mind. And remember, Kylo had been trained by Luke Skywalker and then trained by Snoke, yet Rey, who had no established mentor of any kind, overpowers him.
Okay, so he's not establishing Maz Kanata as a mentor. That's clear. The Force just awakened within her. She touched the lightsaber, experienced visions of the past and visions of the future. The Force awoke in her. She doesn't have a flawless victory with Kylo Ren. She literally said she literally like was in pain half the time and she was pushing back. Maz said be a Jedi and Rey said nah. What do you mean, mentor? Maz said close your eyes, feel it, it's there. The Force, it's around you. It will guide you. Literally the same amount of words that Obi-Wan said to Luke. Stretch out with your feelings. That's your mentor for Luke. That's your mentor for Rey. User a bunch of numbers. What did Qui-Gon say to Anakin? Use your instincts. That's all it requires. That's all a mentor does. Except he trained Luke with a lightsaber for like an hour? You can keep going on with your messages. Clearly you're the pirate or the parrot in this situation.
So any argument pertaining to the Force being supercharged more or less falls apart there, since if that were true, Kylo should be supercharged with the benefit of training, and so Rey should have still been no match for Kylo. So instead,
She
the
wasn't
only
a match for
explanation for
Kylo.
her overpowering Kylo in this instance is, you guessed it, she's just awesome.
No, she was knocked out. She was pushed into a tree and knocked out. That was their second fight. First fight, she lost. Second fight, she got knocked out. Third fight, he has to fight Finn.
And if that weren't enough, she controls the mind of his stormtrooper to let her go and leave his weapon behind. But she grew up with stories about the Jedi, so of course it's reasonable. Some man-bunned man-baby might whimper. Firstly, this would be like hearing stories about Bruce Lee and suddenly being able to perform the one-inch punch. And I don't know if...
I mean, you can perform the one-inch punch hearing about the stories. You're just not going to perform it well. Which is oddly an apt analogy because it takes her 3 tries. Like, I'm not a big fan of this scene, but we know that she just had a connection with Kylo at this point. We know she just peered into his mind. Now, if we compare this moment to Luke, let's compare this moment to Luke suddenly pulling the lightsaber. Who taught Luke how to pull the lightsaber with telekinesis? I'll wait. Let me know when you have an answer. When Luke is captured by the Wampa, who teaches him about telekinesis? Diet, are the Dodgers going to win the World Series? Probably. I don't really follow baseball. He didn't get a hit in? That's because he didn't want to kill her. Nothing in A New Hope established that you could use the Force to move objects. Exactly. So here's the answer to that question. Nobody taught Luke how to pull the lightsaber. Nobody taught Rey the mind trick. Now, if we go into external media and the books, you will find out who taught Luke telekinesis. But that's after the fact. We're going off of just the movies. If we go into external media for Luke's explanation of how he knows telekinesis, we're going to go to the books to explain how Rey knew the mind trick. And the thing is, when Rey and Kylo connected and bridged their minds together, she had a glimpse of all of his abilities and how he used the Force. If we completely eliminate the books and the external media, both Luke and Rey did an ability without any prior knowledge. All I'm asking you to do is be consistent. They're either all Mary Sue's or none of them are.
About you, but outmatching someone's trained thought probe before controlling someone's mind sounds pretty advanced. A far cry from using the Force to guide your instincts a bit. Imagine a dojo that teaches the 5-point palm exploding heart technique on day.
This person likes to use irrelevant analogs and false equivalences.
One might say she siphoned the knowledge from Kylo Ren when she read his mind.
She did. She did.
If this were true, then there would be no need for Jedi temples and no real need for decades of training.
Except she did, and the only reason she could is because they're a dyad. And this is why we judge movies that are a trilogy holistically. If you were to just watch The Force Awakens and that's it, that was the one movie they made, you would have to have a problem with how Rey and Kylo are connected. But because it's explained in the latter movies that they're a dyad and that there is a more power to their connection, then it makes sense holistically. She did lose left from us. Do you think getting knocked out while the opponent is still up is winning? I don't know what these guys are trying to argue. I will say this before we get to the video and the end of it, basically, because it's all kind of moot at this point. Rey did not defeat Kylo. Kylo lost to Rey. And there is a very obvious reason. He was wounded by a bowcaster in the gut and he was bleeding out. There is shots of it purposefully to show you and establish that he's bleeding. He is mentally unstable after killing his own father. Couple that with the fact that Kylo Ren is not trying to kill Rey. Everybody keeps saying that he should have hit her so easily. He should have gotten a few hits in. He's not trying to kill her. In fact, the first 90% of the fight is Kylo Ren pushing her to the cliff because she doesn't know how to fight. He is literally pushing her to the edge. Has her at the edge of the cliff when he finally says, "You need a teacher. I can show you the ways of the Force." Right? So at this point, she's been pushed all the way to the edge. She has no purchase with fighting Kylo. Basically Kylo has been toying with her because he doesn't want to kill her. So he's not going to take hits on her. He wants her alive and unscathed because he wants her to join him. Now, when Kylo sights the Force, Rey closes her eyes, like Maz Kanata says. Feel it, it's all around you. The light, it will guide you. And that's when the light guides her. Now, when she finally pushes Kylo back, he still doesn't want to kill her. That's why when she strikes him, he goes for her hand instead of countering. But because this is the first time Rey is acting on the guidance of the Force, she ends up cutting him in the face. And then the planet falls apart and separates them. Rey did not win. Kylo lost because he drew the fight out. He was unstable and he was bleeding out, and he underestimated Rey. So, Rey fighting back with the Force is the same thing that guided Luke to hit. I mean, VGC, that's why you're a mod. That's why you're a mod. Rey fighting back is the exact same thing as Luke being guided to hit the mark in the Death Star. Is absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. This has nothing to do with Kylo should have killed her or Kylo should have defeated her easily. That's not what the story was telling you. The story was telling you that Kylo was unstable. He didn't want to kill his dad. And he's always been unstable.
A master could just copy and paste his knowledge canon, and such a feat in these scenarios, it would again
Gain powers due to Jedi stories, incorrect. Gain powers by absorbing them from Kylo is correct. Another rule being created for Rey. No. Oh, you mean like the Chosen One prophecy that was created in the prequels? That didn't exist before? You think he's gonna acknowledge that? No? You don't think he's gonna acknowledge that? No, she's not just awesome, man. Luke's only real practical use of the Force during the first movie. I mean, he uses it for his Jedi reflexes, too. Element, is this the first time you've watched this video? This is the first time I'm practically watching it through and through. I have to end the stream in 10 minutes, so I'm not going to have time to go through it all. The first time that I have actually watched it, like years ago, I couldn't get past 10 minutes. So I'm trying to do this live for everyone so that I can hit all of his points. But the video was moot from the beginning. He poisoned the well. He made intellectually dishonest claims, false equivalences, moves the goalpost, and missed complete 10 minutes of scene, 30 minutes of scenes that had setups. You can do hour-long videos on TikTok now, just saying. I might split this up because I think it's been almost 2 hours, but let's try to get through as much as we can. It's not impossible. I used to bullseye womp rats in my T16 back home. They're not much bigger than 2 meters. Yeah, that's because Luke has the Force. The Force was supplemental, not the entire cause. Okay. That's not the entire cause either. This is all supplemental to what's happening with the Starkiller base. This is all happening in spite of the Starkiller base being destroyed. She has no effect on the primary plot of the movie in terms of her encounter with the Force and Kylo. Take care, Corvo. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out. How is this possible? I'm just awesome. Okay, another disingenuous sentence. The first time we see him be useful. Like I said, Rey doesn't win. Kylo loses. Oh, he got wounded, right? Yeah, Finn had no training with a lightsaber. They both didn't have training with a lightsaber. And if we judge these movies holistically, going into The Last Jedi, Snoke explains it. He says, "You are unbalanced, bested by a girl who had never held a lightsaber. You failed." He tells the audience he was unbalanced. Anyways, I don't know if I'll be able to get through this entire video, but I feel like I've debunked just about enough to kind of make the rest of it moot at this point. I also don't have time to do that as well. I want to let everybody go on with their nights and have the rest of their nights. Yoda's Hut is a 2-hour stream. So, thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for hanging out. And I hope there's some portion of audience out there that has watched this and, you know, has learned something. Because, quite frankly, the beginning of the video is he poisons the well. He makes disingenuous statements and completely makes very, very disingenuous statements by utilizing the illusory truth effect with "she's just awesome." But if in about 30 minutes or so of this video, he has not made a single genuine and authentic point that I have not been able to debunk, then it's not going to come in the last 6 minutes either. So yeah, I hope that those who require me to watch the whole video can understand that if you couldn't convince someone in the first 30 minutes, you're not going to convince them in the last 6 minutes, especially when it has all to do with the things that we spoke about. Anyways, listen, whatever the case, however you think about the sequels, whether you love them, you hate them, you love some, you hate one, it doesn't matter. I'm here to debunk the very notion that Rey is either a Mary Sue and Luke Skywalker isn't, or to provide a pathway for you to narratively see that it's either all of them or none of them. Because there's way too much of a double standard being presented in this video. So, I would suggest you guys watch the movies again and try to pick up on this stuff, because I know for the first time, if you've only watched it once, for the first time you could have put blinders on, you could have done something to that you didn't get these points, these clues, these obvious setups. So try to give them a shot. What's going on, Chase? Plot twist, I'm the real Mary Sue. Yeah, you are. Yeah, baby. They claim Rey is bigger Mary Sue because she doesn't lose an arm like Luke and Anakin, and that's intellectually dishonest as well. You know, Obi-Wan never loses an arm. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. The VOD will always be available, and I'll be probably posting this debunk in parts just so it's out there, so I can stop getting comments of people pointing me to Literature Devil's video. It's debunked. I debunked it in the first 5 minutes. It was moot in the first 5 minutes, but I pressed on. Thank you guys so much on Twitch, on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok for hanging out with me this long. Have a wonderful night. For Light and Life, we are all Mary Sues, or not at all. May the Force be with you guys.